Greyridge was quiet in a way that didn't feel natural. Not peaceful. Not calm. Just muted. Like someone had turned the volume of the world down a notch and forgotten to turn it back up. No dogs barked in Greyridge. No children shouted in the streets. Even the wind felt careful, slipping between buildings instead of pushing against them. When cars passed through, rarely, they didn't honk. They didn't speed. They slowed down, as if the town itself was watching. I noticed this the moment I crossed the old wooden sign at the edge of town. Welcome to Greyridge. The paint was faded. The wood beneath it looked newer than it should have been, replaced, maybe. Maintained. Like someone cared enough to keep the sign standing, but not enough to repaint it. I was there because of my uncle, Thomas Hale. Or rather, because of his house. The sheriff from Greyridge called me 3 weeks earlier. Said my uncle had passed in his sleep. Natural causes. Heart failure. Simple. Clean. No investigation needed. But there was something in the sheriff's voice that didn't match his words. He spoke slowly, carefully, like every sentence had to be approved by something standing just behind him. And then he said something strange. "You should come soon," he told me. "Houses don't like being empty here." I asked him what he meant. He paused for a long time. "They change," he finally said, and then hung up. Greyridge sat in a shallow valley surrounded by low hills and thick tree lines. The road into town narrowed as if it didn't expect visitors. The buildings were old but not decaying, maintained just enough to survive. Grocery store, gas station, diner, church. All of it looked normal. Too normal. I parked near the diner and stepped out of my car. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rain that never came. My footsteps sounded loud on the pavement, too loud. I realized then that there was no background noise to swallow them. No hum of electricity. No insects. No distant traffic. Just me. A bell chimed softly as I pushed open the diner door. Every head inside turned to look at me. Not curiosity. Not surprise. Recognition. Like they had been waiting. There were maybe 10 people inside, men and women of different ages, all dressed plainly. No one spoke. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Coffee cups hovered in midair. The waitress was the first to move. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Thomas's nephew," she said. I hadn't told anyone my name. "Yes," I replied slowly. "How did you?" "We remember family here," she said, cutting me off. "Sit anywhere." I sat. The diner resumed eating, but quieter than before. Every conversation was a whisper. I felt watched even when no one was looking directly at me. The waitress placed a coffee in front of me. Black. No steam. "You'll be staying at the Hale house," she said. "Yes." Another pause. "Try not to walk outside after dark." I laughed a little, trying to break the tension. "Is this one of those towns with a curfew?" She leaned closer. "No," she said softly. "It's a listening thing." I didn't ask what that meant. I finished my coffee without tasting it and left the diner with every pair of eyes following me out. My uncle's house sat at the far end of town, near the tree lane. 2 stories. White paint. Wraparound porch. Wind chimes hanging from the eaves. They didn't move. Inside, the house smelled old, but lived in. Furniture dusted. Dishes clean. Bed made. Too prepared for a dead man. That night, I slept poorly. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound. Footsteps. Not inside the house. Outside. Slow. Careful. Circling. I held my breath and listened. No crunch of gravel. No creak of wood. Just the idea of footsteps. Then came a voice. My voice. Calling my name from the porch. Perfectly. I did not move. I did not answer. The footsteps stopped. And the house sighed. I didn't sleep again after that night. Not really. I lay in bed with my eyes closed, counting the seconds between sounds that never came. No crickets, no owls, no distant train horns. The silence in Greyridge wasn't empty, it was alert. Like it was waiting for something to break it. Morning arrived without birdsong. Sunlight crept through the curtains slowly, as if unsure it was allowed inside. When I finally got out of bed, the house felt different. Not colder, not warmer. Aware. I walked into the kitchen and stopped. The chair at the table, my uncle's chair, had been pulled out. I was certain it hadn't been like that the night before. On the table sat a piece of paper. No envelope. No handwriting I recognized. Just one sentence, written neatly in block letters. You did the right thing by not answering. My stomach tightened. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket, trying to convince myself this was some kind of sick town tradition. A prank. A warning meant to scare outsiders. But warnings don't usually know what you did in the dark. The sheriff's office was open, though the door made no sound when I pushed it. Sheriff Calder sat behind his desk, reading a newspaper that didn't appear to have any headlines. He looked up slowly. "You slept," he said. It wasn't a question. I didn't say I did. He nodded anyway. "Still, you were awake." I stared at him. Is everyone in this town psychic, or does privacy just not exist here? Calder folded the paper with care. Privacy exists. Silence doesn't. I showed him the note. He didn't react. Not surprise. Not concern. Just acceptance. That wasn't meant to scare you, he said. It was meant to teach you. Teach me what? He stood and walked to the window, peering out at the street. That Greyridge listens. And it remembers who talks back. I felt anger rising. Something stood on my porch last night and spoke in my voice. Calder nodded again. That means it's learning you. What is it? He turned, and for the first time, I saw fear crack through his calm expression. We don't name it, he said. Names give shape. Shape gives permission. So, what do you call it? We call it the quiet. I spent the afternoon walking the town. People watched from windows, from doorways, from behind curtains that barely moved. No one stopped me. No one spoke unless spoken to, and even then, their answers were short. Careful. At the edge of town, near the old water tower, I found a playground. Rusty swings, cracked slide, a seesaw frozen mid-balance. No laughter, no chalk drawings, no footprints in the dirt. I sat on a bench and felt a strange pressure in my ears, like descending too fast in an airplane. The silence here was heavier, thicker. Then I heard it. Not a sound. A thought. You don't belong. I stood up so fast the bench tipped backward. The pressure vanished instantly. I didn't look back as I left. That evening, the wind chimes on the porch moved for the first time. Not from wind, from rhythm. Slow, intentional. Inside the house, the lights flickered, not off, just dimmer, like something was pulling power without touching the wires. Then came the knocking. 3 soft taps on the front door. I stayed still. 3 taps again. Then a voice, my uncle's voice this time. Took care of the house for you, it said gently. Just like you asked. I clenched my jaw, heart pounding. You always were quiet when you were thinking, the voice continued. That's why it liked you. The door handle turned. Stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, so close it felt like it came from inside my head. Next time, it won't knock. The footsteps retreated. The house did not sigh this time. It trembled. When I finally slept, I dreamed of Greyridge before it was quiet. Children screaming. Dogs barking. Music playing from open windows. And beneath it all, something buried deep underground, listening, waiting for the noise to stop. The scream came from the east side of town. It was loud, loud enough that it felt wrong the instant it happened, like a glass window shattering inside my head. Sound didn't belong in Greyridge. The town rejected it the way a body rejects poison. I was already on my feet before I realized I'd moved. Doors opened along the street as I ran. People stepped outside, not panicked, not shouting, just watching. Some crossed themselves. Others lowered their heads. No one followed. The scream cut off abruptly. Not fading. Stopped. At the edge of town stood the Morris house. Small. Yellow paint peeling. Porch light still on despite the rising sun. The front door was wide open. I hesitated at the threshold. Inside, the air felt warmer, thick, like a held breath. The living room was untouched. No struggle. No blood. But the TV was on. Static hissed loudly, violently loud compared to the rest of the town. The volume knob had been torn clean off. I found Mrs. Morris in the bedroom. She was sitting upright on the bed, eyes open, mouth frozen in a shape that had once been a scream. Her throat was unmarked, her chest unbroken, but her ears, both were bleeding, as if something had forced sound into her. Behind me, Sheriff Calder spoke softly. She spoke after dark. I turned. Spoke. He nodded. Yelled. Called for help. Said she heard her husband in the hallway. Her husband had died 6 years earlier. She answered. Calder continued. It answered back. That night, the town gathered at the church. Not for prayer. For instruction. The pastor, an old man with shaking hands, stood at the pulpit and did not raise his voice. Greyridge was not always quiet, he said. Once, we were like any other town. Images flickered on the wall behind him. Old photographs. Smiling families. Parades. A marching band. Soundless memories of sound. We built the listening station beneath the hills, the pastor continued, to monitor seismic activity, military funding, experimental equipment. My stomach dropped. They didn't tell us everything, he said. We drilled too deep. Heard something we shouldn't have. A photo appeared, grainy, black and white. Men in helmets. A tunnel. And it hurt us, he whispered. The projector clicked. New image. The tunnel collapsed. No bodies recovered. Only silence afterward. And then, the pastor said, it began to mimic. Voices. Sounds. Names. The town learned quickly. The quieter we were, the less it took. The less it learned. We fed it silence, he said. And in return, it stayed buried. Someone sobbed quietly in the back. The pastor looked directly at me. Until family came back. That night, I didn't go home. I walked the streets instead, listening. The silence was thinner now. Fraying. Near the old water tower, I heard laughter. Children's laughter. I froze. The playground was empty. The swings moved on their own, creaking softly. Then came footsteps behind me. My own. Perfectly timed. I did not turn. The footsteps stopped when I stopped. A breath brushed my ear. You remember noise, it said in my voice. You can teach me. The ground beneath my feet vibrated. Deep. Massive. Like something shifting far below. The town lights flickered out all at once. And for the first time since I arrived, Greyridge screamed. Not people. The town itself. Wood splitting. Glass shattering. A roar that came from under the earth. And beneath it all, a voice that was no longer pretending. Too loud. Greyridge did not survive the scream. By morning, the town looked the same, but felt wrong in a way I didn't yet have words for. Windows were cracked. Doors hung open. The church bell lay shattered at the base of the tower. Its rope snapped like something had pulled it downward with purpose. And the silence was gone. Not replaced by normal sound. Replaced by breathing. Low. Distant. Constant. Like the town itself had lungs now. I found Sheriff Calder sitting on the steps of the station, staring at the ground. He didn't look up when I approached. It's not buried anymore, he said. You knew this would happen, I replied. He shook his head slowly. We knew it could. Not that it would. I told him about the footsteps, the voice, the way it stopped pretending. He listened without interrupting. Then he said the one thing I hadn't expected. It's not angry. I stared at him. It killed someone. It corrected something, he said quietly. Sound is how it learns. Silence was how we starved it. Now it's hungry again. Then we leave, I said. Evacuate the town. Calder laughed once, a short, bitter sound that died immediately. You don't leave Greyridge, he said. You fade out of it. I finally understood my uncle's house that afternoon. In the basement, beneath a loose floorboard, I found the door. Steel, bolted shut, covered in old warning labels half scratched away. Behind it, stairs. They led down farther than the house should have allowed. The air grew warmer with every step. At the bottom was a room carved directly into bedrock. Cables ran along the walls, dead now. Old monitors, recording equipment, and in the center, a chair. My uncle's chair, facing a microphone. On the wall behind it, carved deep into the stone, were hundreds of tally marks. Days, years, decades. A notebook lay open on the desk. Thomas Hale, listening duty. I read until my hands shook. My uncle hadn't stayed because he loved the town. He stayed because someone had to be heard instead of everyone else. The quiet didn't just listen. It focused. The town learned that long ago. If one person spoke, really spoke, consistently, the quiet would center on them, feed on them, learn them, and leave the rest alone. My uncle became its voice, its companion, its translator. The last entry was dated 3 days before his death. It's losing patience. It wants more sound, more variety. I can't give it that anymore. If you're reading this, it means it chose you next. That night, the house spoke without a mouth. The walls creaked into words. The floorboards whispered my name. Not threatening, inviting. You already listen, it said. You hear what others ignore. The ground trembled again, closer this time. Stronger. I went to the church. The townspeople were already there, waiting. No one stopped me. No one begged. They just watched with the calm of people who had lived too long knowing how this ended. The pastor stepped forward. You don't have to, he said. Yes, I replied. I do. Because the truth was simple. The quiet didn't want destruction. It wanted attention. And Greyridge had been feeding it silence like a lie. At midnight, I sat in the chair beneath the town. The microphone hummed to life on its own. I spoke. Not loudly, not softly, steadily. I told it stories. My childhood, my fears. Every sound I remembered. Music, laughter, rain, screams. Hours passed. The breathing slowed. The tremors stopped. Above me, Greyridge slept for the first time in years. By dawn, the town was quiet again, but not empty. They buried me in Greyridge, a marker with no name. The town went on. Children laughed again, but only during the day. Dogs barked, but never after sunset. People learned where sound belonged. Sometimes, visitors pass through. They say Greyridge feels peaceful. They say it's a good place to settle down. They don't hear me, but it does. And it's still listening. For more stories, hit like and subscribe.